I'd like to welcome you to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan today. Obviously, I'm the convener today. And at this fellowship, we embrace diversity of all kinds, believing that respecting a variety of ideas, values, and beliefs makes us stronger and better. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. Our theme this month is play, and summertime is a great time for play, along with humor, along with seriousness, perhaps too. Last week's improvisation, in which we created a story with Jonah Liu's leadership, was so much fun. I have a couple of thoughts to share for today's service. With the lineup of play in June, including Child's Play on the 6th, let's see what happens on the 13th. Sylvia Beeman, Diane Barker, and I decided to address the themes of verbal humor and wordplay, as in poetry, as our focus for today. Bill Moyers, in his book, his little book, Fooling with Words, writes about his entry into the world of poetry with thoughts such as my own preferences were unaffected by critical analysis. I could not read the notes, but I loved the music. While teachers said that we would appreciate the poems much more if we understood the virtues of iambic pentameter, allusion, and the resonance of repetition, they would not have us dismember a poem's anatomy at the risk of its soul or squeeze meaning from it at the expense of delight. So that's a little thought to introduce our theme. Renee has recorded hymn 1024 for the opening hymn, When the Spirit Says Do. We'll play that now and sing along if you like, but please do keep your mic muted. Hymn 1024. Renee's great, isn't she? Thank you, Renee. And the Spirit says now it's time to light the chalice. Sylvia is going to light the chalice, and I will read a little bit more while she does so. This is from Elizabeth Harding's A Symbol of Learning and Love, which I found at the UU Association website. We Unitarian Universalists don't drink from our chalice. Instead, we use it to hold the flame. The circle of the chalice helps keep the fire small. The flame doesn't blind us. It doesn't burn us. It gives us light so we can all see the different things in the universe, even the invisible ones, because the Unitarian Universalist flame is a light of learning. The flaming chalice is a symbol of learning and love. It's our symbol, the symbol of Unitarian Universalism. Thank you, Sylvia, again. I'd like to read now some more thoughts from Bill Moyer's book, Fooling with Words. My early exposure to the sounds of poetry served me well when I turned to reading poems alone, especially a poem whose meaning was not readily apparent. Often when I'm reading silently, my mind will, on its own, apply the brakes in mid-sentence to spin down a side road to inquire into the author's purpose or point. The sure way back, I find, is to follow the advice offered by Robert Pinsky. And he said, read the poem aloud and don't worry about interpreting it. Pinsky says that poetry is a vocal art that requires a physical response. If you fall in love with a person, a cuisine, an animal, a sport, in time you'll want to analyze it, know the history of it, and know what intelligent people think about it. But the first thing is you like the pet. You like to pet the animal, eat the food, look at the person. Just so with a poem. Read it aloud to relish the consonants and vowels and the way the verbs and adjectives and nouns do their jobs. Once you hear the music, you can probe for meaning or for the sources of creativity and craft. One more quick thought from Bill Moyers. In his own book, Edward Hirsch writes, poems communicate before they are understood. Let the poem work in you as a human experience. Listen to the words and pay attention to the feelings they evoke. So with that, let's go to breakout rooms and greet each other today. Juneteenth just happened yesterday. The solstice is tomorrow. We're talking about poetry and we're gonna have fun. Let's go to the breakout rooms.
One type of verbal play is verbal humor, which can take many different forms. I will discuss a few of those. Absurd humor is foolish or ridiculous and often includes the use of nonsensical language. Why did the elephant paint his toenails red? So he could hide in the strawberry patch. So what do you call an elephant with a machine gun? Sir. A pun is a play on words in which a word of multiple meanings or word of similar sound but different meanings is used to create a joke. It's probably the commonest form of humor. Did you hear about the fight downtown? It's called a shopping mall. Without geometry, life is pointless. Old teachers never die. They just lose their class. And if you have a bit of a mean streak, there's always sarcasm, where you say the opposite of what you mean to mock or ridicule. Once I asked our 3-year-old daughter if she could please pick up her toys, which were littered all over the dining room floor. It's so nice to have a nice, tidy home, I told her. She pointed to the dining room table, which was littered with books and projects and stacks of paper, and said, "You mean like that?" I wondered, was she just making an observation? But later I asked my husband, "Have you ever heard of a 3-year-old being sarcastic?" And he replied, "I wonder where she got that from." And then there's overstatement and understatement. I was awakened a few days ago at 6 a.m. by a large commotion at the school construction site a couple doors down from my house. In just 5 minutes, I heard a grinding, a chainsaw sawing, reverberations of a large metal pole being dropped, an engine backfiring, an engine revving, chainsawing, brakes squealing, chopping, whirring, pounding, banging, shouting, beeping, and a siren? Do you think that's overstatement? No, it's an understatement. Exclusive humor is specific to a particular group of people, like a work group or an organization. A Unitarian died and was surprised to find himself walking along a road. The road branched, and on the left was a sign that said, "This way to heaven." And on the right was a sign that said, "This way to a discussion about heaven." He decided to take the second path. How come the Buddhist monk did such a terrible job vacuuming his cell? He didn't have any attachments. Verbal humor can have strong cultural as well as linguistic components and can have a more serious intent besides amusement. It can be a mechanism to deflect insensitive comments or a training to cope with societal abuse. Lakota elder Albert Whitehead tells of an incident of an old Navajo sitting, resting against a wall, cross-legged, with his hat pulled down over his eyes. A tourist came along and proceeded to take several photographs of him. And then she said, "Excuse me, sir, are you Brown from the sun?" "No, ma'am, I'm Jim from Earth." The pleasure of making this witty put-down to the insensitive inquisitor was undoubtedly great, but the retelling is equally satisfying to people subjected repeatedly to boneheaded comments in a way that turns the tables on the thoughtless person. In African American communities, verbal play is a performance art elevated to the level of competitive sport, where mastery of a highly structured repartee can confer high social status. It involves the ability to stay cool while exchanging outrageous insults or challenges to self-esteem. Young children in such communities gradually learn this style of verbal play, using one-liners at first, but often accidentally giving or taking real offense before they understand how to use techniques creatively and with the proper emotional distance. I would tell you some yo mama jokes, but I'm afraid our audience, not tutored in proper emotional distance, might take offense. So you can Google them yourself at your own risk. Verbal humor can make a difficult life more bearable by making fun of hardships. The first Russian says to the second Russian, "Is it true that Vanya won 10 million rubles in the state lottery?" The second Russian replies, "Oh, yes, it's true. Only it wasn't the state lottery, it was the local bingo games. And it wasn't 10 million rubles, it was 10 kopecks. And it wasn't Vanya, it was Yakov. And he didn't win, he lost." Verbal humor can be a way to cope with personal tragedy or to address taboo or difficult topics like death. "I'm not afraid of death. I just don't want to be there when it happens." You know, if you don't go to your friends' funerals, they won't go to yours. My husband asked me, "If one of us dies first, would you mind if I took over your art studio?" Now remember, as you go about your daily life, don't miss a chance to laugh or to share a joke with a friend.
Very nice. Well done, Sylvia. Thank you very much. Your choices and examples of verbal humor have been illuminating and have certainly tweaked our brains. Now for the offertory. Every month, our congregation provides assistance to a nonprofit organization. This month's Helping Hands recipient is Shepherd's Crossing. And Shepherd's Crossing is an ecumenical ministry offering assistance in three key areas: budget counseling, referrals, and payments for utilities, rent, and prescription medications. You can give to Helping Hands by going to our regular website at uufm.net and clicking on Donate. You will have the option of giving to Helping Hands, the Blessing Box by Wonder Workshop, or the UUFM General Operating Budget. I might recommend all of the above. You may also send dollars by mail. All donations are greatly appreciated and help to support all the aspects of our fellowship. So as the offertory music is performed by Renee, please type your joys and concerns into the chat feature of our Zoom meeting. Sylvia will read these after the music. And we now have a pre-recorded song for the offertory, Neil Diamond's I'm a Believer by Renee.
That was beautiful, Renee. Thank you. I like how you mix the blues with the joyfulness, just like life, all mixed up together.
Thank you, Sylvia. Thank you for reading those comments. Let's all reflect on and share the joys and sympathize with the concerns and the sorrows. And now I'm going to introduce Diane Barker, Anna Franklin, and Katie Page, reciting and reflecting a short series of favorite poems in a combination video. There are 5 parts for what's coming. Combination video. Anna will speak live. More of Diane's video. Ending with the lanyard is another video, and then we will be going to Katie for the 5th part of this reflection. So, Mark, if you want to start that up, it would be great.
Good morning. My name is Diane Barker, and I'm a member here at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas. This morning I'll be doing a reflection on word play and poetry, and I've come to call this is Your Brain on Poetry. I looked for an article that would describe the sections of the brain and when they come online when you're reading poetry, encountering metaphor or alliteration or repetition, but I haven't found those brain scans yet. They probably exist, but I didn't find them. So what I want to emphasize today is just how poetry creates a kind of energy and joy by making people use both hemispheres of their brain. And so we're going to kick up a joyful hullabaloo among the stars with some poems. First, I want to thank Sylvia Beeman for her startling and exuberant cheek popping. I tried that, but I couldn't make much noise, so I came up with this. I call it balloon popping. And Sylvia, thank you so much for the tour of wordplay. And Anna, thank you for reciting Edward Lear's nonsense poem, The Owl and the Pussycat. And thank you to Katie for reading Galway Cannill's Everyone Was in Love. When you're a kid, absorbing language, those classic nursery rhymes do a lot of heavy lifting. Jack be nimble, Jack be quick, Jack jump over the candlestick. Little Miss Muffet sat on a tuffet, eating her curds and whey. Along came a spider and sat down beside her and frightened Miss Muffet away. So the repetition and the rhyme, that rollicking sense of rhythm, that strangely stays with you your whole life. Probably all of you remember those nursery rhymes, and there's a reason that they stick in your head. They're part of the wiring that you need to process language. So Anna Franklin is going to start us off on our journey through a set of poems where you can experience your brain on poetry. We're going to leave a space of 5 seconds between the poems so that you have some time to reflect. And we'll end with Katie's, and then I hope to join you all for coffee and conversation. Your brain on poetry is play. You have to start from a developmental standpoint. You begin as a little fertilized egg in your mother's womb. You absorb all the amazing feelings, sounds, vibrations. Always there's the comfort of warmth, the sensation, the rhythms of being in an ocean. Hold in your mind the loving, protected environment that your body remembers and seeks to recreate. Splosh, you arrive. You're swaddled, cuddled, carried everywhere, swung up, swung down, you're cooed to, sung to, and without thinking about it, your people are working to socialize you with sound and with touch. Lullabies, nursery rhymes, cluckings, shushing, bringing you into the tribe of humanity. So at this point, I would like to have Anna Franklin recite The Owl and the Pussycat.
So when I was growing up with my 3 siblings, we had a family bedtime ritual. We all had a pig pile on one person's bed, mother and father usually included. Then we settled down, got comfortable, and held hands in a circle. We recited a prayer, Jesus, tender shepherd. Then mother, if we insisted, which we always did, sang to us. This is a song she most always sang, and it comes from a poem by Edward Lear. The owl and the pussycat went to sea in a beautiful pea green boat. They took some honey and plenty of money wrapped up in a 5-pound note. The owl looked up to the stars above and sang to a light guitar. Oh, lovely pussy, oh, pussy, my love, what a wonderful pussy you are. Pussy said to the owl, you elegant fowl, how charmingly sweet you sing. Oh, let us be married, too long we have tarried, but what shall we do for a ring? So they sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the bong tree grows. And there in a wood, a piggy wig stood with a ring in the end of his nose. Dear pig, are you willing to sell for a shilling your ring? Said the piggy, I will. So they sailed away and were married next day by the turkey who lives on the hill. And they dined upon mince and slices of quince, which they ate with a runcible spoon. And hand in hand, by the edge of the sand, they danced by the light of the moon.
essence and struggle with the enormity of the world and your place in it. All the adults are hypocrites, and you have to get a minimum wage job. Then, in English Lit, you discover Wordsworth. My heart leaps up when I behold a rainbow in the sky. So was it when my life began. So is it now I am a man. So be it when I shall grow old, or let me die. The child is father to the man, and I could wish my days to be bound each to each in natural piety. So you're on your way. You're launched by a poem where you understand the way forward. You have to make your own way. You have to balance reality and your imagination. And poetry will help you. There are people who have gone before you. All these whacked out poets have gone before to let you know that this is the business of adulthood and personhood, balancing what you could call a battle, but I prefer to think of as cooperation between your left and right hemispheres, between your grip on reality, your calculating mind, counting and sorting and keeping track of things, and your fabulous, fantastical imagination that can envision something that's never been seen before, something that everyone will eventually like but cannot conceive of. This formal ceremony that meshes these two opposing forces or views of the world is poetry. Report from a Far Place by William Stafford. Making these word things to step on across the world, I could call them snowshoes. They creak, sag, bend, but hold over the great deep cold, and they turn up at the toes. In war or city or camp, they could save your life. You can muse them by the fire. Be careful though. They burn or don't burn in their own strange way when you say them. Looking for the Scissors in the Dark by Diane Barker. I know where the scissors are, in a jar towards the back of the desk in the study, so I don't want the light. It's not that I'm too cheap to turn it on, but that my pleasure comes in walking in the dark, striding the length of a room, touching my way through a doorway, easing on the approach, reaching for the holes in the handle, and if I miss, I reach again, comb the emptiness for what I trust is there. Now that we've made the leap to the ceremony of uniting the hemispheres of the brain, I'd like to make one more point that makes poetry accessible and gratifying. It's an emotional experience. And emotions are not one-dimensional. There isn't, when you say the word love, just one sensation, one emotion. It's always colored by something else, by many others, like wistfulness or jealousy or gratitude, sacrifice. But there is no one feeling. And what poetry forces us to do is to see or experience complexity and conflict in a good way. I want to tell the story of when I took over a class for Jerry Dees, maybe a third of the way through the class, and there were some people in the class who maybe were not fans of poetry, but they needed an upper level humanities class. And we had been discussing Robert Frost's Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. And so I walk in the classroom one day and the hands go up in the back of the room on the back row, and this revolt begins where the students say, you know, you've ruined poetry for us. We just picked this apart. We picked apart every word, and now it's just no fun. And being a relatively new teacher and very eager to consider all complaints, I thought about it for a while, and then I went, no, that's not how it works. Think of the music that you love. Can somebody ruin a song? No. You perform the song, you sing the song, you love it, you enjoy it. It's the same thing with poetry. So when you say it, nobody can take it away from you. Nobody can touch it. It's yours. So let's do Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening together. You have mute on, and most of you know it. And so let's just go through it. Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening by Robert Frost. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. The little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep, and miles to go before I sleep. The only other point I want to make is about how poetry is best when, it really can't come alive until you give it your breath, your bone, your blood, your body. And if you have memorized them, they live in your cells. You can call them up whenever you want to. They're companions. And so I'd like to talk a little bit about when Robert Pinsky was the 39th Poet Laureate of the country. So this was from 97 to 2000. So he contended that people memorize poems. People have favorite poems, and they're out there. But how are you going to get them? So he put out a call for submissions, and he got 18,000 submissions from people who wanted to come to some place in cities across the country and recite their favorite poem. He called this the Favorite Poem Project. And so I was fortunate to go to one of these readings in Salina. That was one of the sites. And there were two people who had both wanted to recite Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. One was very young, probably in the teens, early 20s, and the other was very old, probably in their 70s, 80s. And I can't really describe the difference in the readings. You know, all the words were the same, they had it memorized, but the emotion from each of those people was different. One was looking forward, and the other was not looking backward, but looking towards the end very consciously. if you go to the Library of Congress site, they have a wonderful article about Pinsky's favorite poem project. And I believe that this project is continuing. And I hope that we at UU start a favorite poem project. And we could come in April, National Poetry Month, and have people read or recite their favorite poem. When I was doing my research, I ran across Ian McClellan. Ian McClellan reading Sonnet 18. And I was so impressed with, this is a really important actor who can control his voice and does amazing things. So then this is me mimicking Ian McClellan. And really what he did when I heard him, just exploded this poem for me. He slowed it down. He had a different sense of emphasis, but mostly it was the emotion. So here's my version of William Shakespeare's Sonnet 18. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds doth shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a note. Sometimes too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed, and every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou own'st, nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee. I want to say something about how you know a poem is a ceremony. So watch people when they prepare to do the poem. They change. You can see a person adjust. They move their personality out of the way, and they become a servant to the poem, whatever the poem is. It's just this odd thing that happens, and you can watch it. It's a little transition. I'll do Robert Herrick's Upon Julia's Close. When as in silks my Julia goes, then methinks how sweetly flows the liquefaction of her clothes. When next I cast my eyes and see that brave vibration each way free, oh, how that glittering taketh me. And then you're out of the poem and back to being yourself. I'd like to tell you the story of the yellow-billed cuckoo. And this occurred a few days ago, and this telling will eventually become a poem. But currently I think of poems as only being spoken. So this is one version of a poem. The other night I was sound asleep, really sound asleep, having a great sleep. And all of a sudden, I heard this clunk, 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 clunk. It's the song, if you can call it a song, of the yellow-billed cuckoo or the rain crow. When people hear this sound, they think it's going to rain, or they have the myth that it's going to rain. But the song, if you've heard it, it rises. It doesn't go on for very long, about 5 or 6 glonk, glonk, glonks, but it rises and then it stops. There'll be a silence and it might start again. But this one that woke me up 30, 50 times longer than normal, just went on and on and on, glonk, 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 glonk. So I go out on the deck to see what's going on, and I could tell that the cuckoo was probably in a hackberry tree. And below in the brush, it was probably coral berry buckbrush or something, there were these little quacking sounds. Quack, quack, quack. The fledglings were down below, and the parent was trying to teach them this song. And the poor little fledglings, they were like, what? I can't do that. I don't get it. And suddenly, I understood the dilemma of a parent trying to teach its young, this is how you be who you are. This is who you are. So you're taking an empty tablet and imposing on it. Maybe there's some genetic material there to help you out, but that parent was driving home. No, this is it. You gotta make this sound. There's no other way. This is it. And that just taught me how everything that we do, that we offer the future generations, we're teaching them how to be in the world. And every poem is someone's attempt to say, this is how I am in the world. This is how I see things. And you could see things, if you make some adjustments, you would see them the way that I see them. And that is like the true mystery of poetry, that it can take you where someone else is living.
Forward TV. The world is thinking.
I'm going to read a poem, read a few more, a poem about what American children tend to do in the summer often. It's called The Lanyard, and it's a poem, I guess with it, you know, what most poets tend to do, which is if you want to write something, write about a topic that's rather large, you choose kind of an image as point of entry, rather than taking on the topic in a frontal way. So, The Lanyard. The other day, as I was ricocheting slowly off the pale blue walls of this room, bouncing from typewriter to piano, from bookshelf to an envelope lying on the floor, I found myself in the L section of the dictionary where my eyes fell upon the word lanyard. No cookie nibbled by a French novelist could send one more suddenly into the past, a past where I sat at a workbench at a camp by a deep Adirondack lake, learning how to braid thin plastic strips into a lanyard, a gift for my mother. I had never seen anyone use a lanyard or wear one if that's what you did with them, but that did not keep me from crossing strand over strand again and again until I had made a boxy red and white lanyard for my mother. She gave me life and milk from her breasts, and I gave her a lanyard. She nursed me in many a sick room, lifted teaspoons of medicine to my lips, set cold face cloths on my forehead, and then led me out into the airy light and taught me to walk and swim, and I in turn presented her with a lanyard. Here are thousands of meals, she said, and here is clothing and a good education. And here is your lanyard, I replied. which I made with a little help from a counselor. Here is a breathing body and a beating heart, strong legs, bones, and teeth, and 2 clear eyes to read the world, she whispered. And here I said, is the lanyard I made at camp. And here, I wish to say to her now, is a smaller gift, not the archaic truth that you can never repay your mother, but the rueful admission that when she took the 2-tone lanyard from my hands, I was as sure as a boy could be that this useless, worthless thing I wove out of boredom would be enough to make us even.
That's powerful.
Mm,
Serious, but also fun.
okay.
Well, Billy Collins is a tough act to follow.
Mm.
So without any words to introduce this next poem, I'm happy to read for you all. Everyone Was in Love by Galway Kinnell, first published in 2006 in The Atlantic. One day when they were little, Maud and Fergus appeared in the doorway, naked and mirthful, with a dozen long garter snakes draped over each of them like brand new clothes. Snake tails dangled down their backs, and snake foreparts in various lengths fell over their fronts, heads raised and swaying, alert as cobras. They writhed their dry skins upon each other, as snakes like doing in lovemaking, with the added novelty of caressing soft, smooth, moist human skin. Maud and Fergus were deliciously pleased with themselves. The snakes seemed to be tickled too. We were enchanted. Everyone was in love. Then Maud drew down off Fergus's shoulder, as if off a tie rack, a peculiarly lumpy snake, and told me to look inside. Inside that double-hinged jaw, a frog's green webbed hind feet were being drawn, like a diver's, very slowly, as if into deepest waters. Perhaps, thinking I might be considering rescue, Maud said, "Don't. Frog is already elsewhere."
Wow. Diane, Anna, Katie, thank you so much. That was literally wonderful. I really don't know what to say. I hope everyone can stay for coffee and conversation when we'll discuss the poems and these thoughts. But right now, let's go to the closing hymn that Renee has recorded for us. This is hymn 1050, Jazz Alleluia. All right.
Great program. Oh.
Many thanks to Renee for the music selection and the performances. It's time now, I think, to go to the coffee and conversation where we can talk together. Please stay in the meeting to join us now. Certainly Sylvia, Diane, Anna, and Kate have given us a lot to think about. Please remember to unmute yourself when you want to speak. And thanks to everybody involved. Thank you so much. coffee and conversation.